workshop, as most of you might know, ICN have started a new committee called ICN Spiritual and Committee. The objective of this committee is to enhance the spiritual aspect of ICN. Workshops and retreats and Quran competitions and whatnot. And again, the spiritual aspect of ICN. Alhamdulillah, there's already a lot of events going on. But to supplement and enhance whatever the current event going on, the spiritual aspect of it as well. And among as you know, a couple months back, or I think last month, we sent a survey soliciting for all the topics and events which we can enhance the spiritual aspect. And alhamdulillah, we got good feedback from the community. As part of that feedback is what this is the first of the series of the workshop. And so this will be conducted on a monthly basis, and we are still looking for the list of topics. And at the end of this event, we will probably tomorrow or so we will be sending a link asking for the feedback. So in that you can also specify any topics which you are interested as well. We can include that, and then we can schedule it accordingly as well, inshallah. As per this event, alhamdulillah, like I said, this will be a workshop conducted by the Mufti. This is a very important aspect of our deen, which we thought everyone should know. I mean, we all face this one day. Some younger old men, brother or sister, we all have to be facing this day one day. And the goal of this event workshop is to make sure we are very well equipped, prepared for the day. Either your loved one is next to you are preparing or enhancing him to pass on that part of the time, and you be prepared for that event as well. So hopefully this will be beneficial. For that we invited Mufti Haroon. Most of us have seen Haroon Sahib. He is here most of the Janazah Salah. And alhamdulillah, he has a very good, quick response and with quick call. He is here. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for all the support given to ICN Mufti Haroon Sahib. Mufti, a small profile about Mufti Haroon. Just to make sure we understand what his background is. Mufti Haroon Sahib is raised in Chicago and one of the first American scholars to travel abroad to study the Islamic sciences. Having studied electrical engineering from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Mufti Haroon Sahib set out to Pakistan to pursue higher education in the Islamic sciences. He first took an intensive course in Arabic and Quranic philosophy at the Quran College in Lahore. Later, after devoting months of his precious time to the blessed workers of Dawat, his desire for more in-depth Islamic knowledge led him to the Madrasa Arabiya, Masjid Zakaria in Rawalpindi, Pakistan. Completing his formal studies of Arabic, fiqh, adab, balaghat, tafsir and hadith at the Madrasa Arabiya, Raivan, Maulana Haroon, Mufti Haroon Sahib later traveled to Multan to study at one of the top iftar programs in the country. He completed his Mufti training at Khairul Madaris, Multan the following year with the blessing of his renowned teacher, Mufti Abdul Sattar Al-Mutani, Rahmatullah Alayhi. Mufti Haroon Sahib is also a licensed funeral director and the founder of Muslim Funeral Services Incorporated, inshallah. And as part of this event, inshallah, the format of this event is the first 1 hour or 15 the dying person, what we are to do, and the whole funeral process. And at the end of the presentation, inshallah, the brothers will be staying here, and the sisters will be going to the men's prayer hall, where the demo of the process will be taking place. And so, like I said, at the end of this event, food will be served, and there will be a handout. We have the handouts of explaining the whole procedure. Whoever is interested, please ask me, inshallah, so that you can. It's a stick out in the fridge. So we can quick reference guide to make sure we prepare as well. So it will be approachable to you, so that you'll be prepared at that time as well, inshallah. And along this workshop, so there will be the next month is the second workshop is March 22nd, which will be representing the Black History Month. It will be conducted by Abdullah Michel. And without further delay, inshallah, so Mufti Haroon Sahib. And sorry, after the presentation, there will be a Q&A session as well before we break out for the ghusl process.
Bismillah.
Okay, I think both.
Bismillah.
You're good, inshallah.
Bismillah.
This one? Where do we do this? What do you do?
اللهم صل على رسول الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كل نفس ذائقة الموت صدق الله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي Jazakallah khair, brother. I wanted to thank the Naperville community, the community, Brother Shoaib and all the other brothers here in the community for inviting us. Alhamdulillah, this is a very important topic, and for many of you who've known me and my family, I see many elders here who know my parents. As the communities developed back in the 70s and the 80s, alhamdulillah, our elders, they sought to provide the necessities for our communities. Alhamdulillah, now we have many Muslim schools, we have many halal meat shops, we have masjids and many primary schools. This is due to the efforts of our elders, alhamdulillah. But one of the necessities that is needed within our community was to take care of our dead. It's just a practical conclusion to our life. Whether you're Muslim or not, you can't deny death. And this was a necessity that was needed amongst our community, because before we came along, we used to go to non-Muslim funeral homes and they would do many things which were not appropriate. So alhamdulillah, first of all, I want to thank my parents, and especially my mom, who's actually, and I see some aunties here who actually knew my mom, that she was actually the catalyst for me getting into this. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I see some familiar faces who I've done funerals for. And if you've ever gone through the process of having somebody in your family pass away, it is already a tense time, the time of pressure. You don't want to have extra added pressure due to some outside influences. I remember when my mom passed back in 2001, there was no Muslim in this area dealing with this aspect of our community. Then we had to educate them, just simple things as far as not bringing shoes inside the house or not having ladies, dealing with ladies. This, we may think it's a basic thing, but at that time it was still needed some education. So alhamdulillah, now we've been doing this work for the last I would say 2006, almost like 15, 16 years now, alhamdulillah. And I think we've done many janazas here in Naperville and throughout Chicagoland. So today, my intent is just to educate the community. This is a general community event where you as the community would have an idea by the time we're done what to do when someone passes away. That's the first question we're going to address. Then when someone passes away, unless you've experienced this already, someone has a loved one pass away, if you have not, then you may be faced with the question, okay, what do I do? Do I call the police? Do I call the ambulance? Do I call, who do I call? What do I need to do? So we'll divide that question into two parts. One, as far as the dealing with the funerals, picking up the body, doing the ghusl, and we'll cover that in detail. And the second part is making the burial arrangements. That's what we're talking about here. One is making the funeral arrangements. Number two, making the burial arrangements. Now these for some people this may seem counterintuitive. They seem like the same thing. You're going to do janazah, you're going to bury, it's the same thing. But no, just logistically, these are two separate departments, just to think of it that way. So that way it makes it easier for you to understand once or if that happens to you. And then as Brother Sheikh Dawood mentioned, that inshallah we'll have this PowerPoint, and at the end we'll give you a chance to ask questions. So I'm just going to cover generalities. If you have specific questions, you can ask me, wait for me after I'm done, we can have individual questions. And then at the end we'll separate. We'll have the ladies will go into the other hall there, and the men will come here. We'll actually go through the practical steps of how to shroud the body, the coffin. Then to wash the ghusl and coffin of the body. We'll do that here for those who are interested, inshallah. So when someone passes away, there are, depending on how they passed away, that makes a difference. One, if someone passed away at the hospital, most people who are terminal, somebody has cancer, somebody had a heart attack, so most people, they go to the hospital when something happens. And many of the people that passed away at the hospital. So someone passed away at the hospital, what should you do? So practical steps, even in the hospital or at home, as far as the body is concerned, yes, you need to close the eyes. Sometimes, the eyes stay open. You need to tie the chin, especially for the elderly. Some people, they may, especially if they had dentures or if they could not, tie the chin, basically with just a strap, a patti, and then tie the toes, tie the feet together. Because sometimes it's a regular chemical process where the body freezes. It's not frozen, but it's a chemical process where actually the body becomes hard. It's called rigor mortis. And sometimes later on, if you want to close the mouth, then it may be hard to close. So as soon as that happens, as soon as someone passes away, actually before we get to that, I had an extra slide. We took it out for a different reason. The first step before we actually get to that is for those who have some family members who may be, for family members who may have been, diagnosed with a terminal illness, somebody has cancer. So if you know death is coming, sometimes you really can't know. You're going, it's an accident, sudden death, that's something you really can't prepare for. But for those who know, the best thing to do would be somebody should be with the dying person at all times. All this is detailed in our website, and as you can see, it's in this pamphlet here. Pamphlet is basically a printout of Ta'lim al-Haq. Ta'lim al-Haq is a book printed in South Africa. These are the details of what to do. But here basically they're telling us that when someone is close to death, and you will know, in the sense that someone has been diagnosed, say, oh, you don't have this much. Wallahu alam, doctors only can guess. But when the last few minutes, few hours arise, you really have an idea. It's very hard for the person to breathe. They take very short, drastic breaths, like, if anybody has seen them, I'm sure that they can testify to this. So at that time, or even before that, somebody should be with the deceased at all times. Somebody should be reading Quran, Surah Yasin, ideally. I remember, Iqra'u Yasin ala mawtakum. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, read Surah Yasin. But those who are close to death, it helps them. And that I can see from personal experience. I remember when my mom was sick, I was there in the last minutes. And she would tell me that, I don't know what happens, wallahu alam, Allah knows, is that it does makes it easy for them. So first of all, if whoever is there, they should be reading Quran. If you don't know how to read Quran, get someone who does, or if not, at least have some tape on or some Surah Yasin, if not the whole Quran. But at the last few minutes, read the kalima, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. And you don't want to tell them to say, oh mom, say La ilaha, oh dad, say La ilaha. You don't want to tell them that. You just keep reading, and that, in fact, this is explicit in the hadith, that you say it out loud, because sometimes they may not be able to respond. They may not be able to say anything. But as long as they hear you, subliminally, if they hear you saying it, inshallah, Allah gives them tawfiq that they will also, their last words will be, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. And then, Man kana akhir kalamu, La ilaha illallah, wajud alayhim al-jannah. And that's what we want. That we want to die in a state of iman. So that's important. Somebody, and I'm sure in our community, alhamdulillah, we do that. We have somebody makes a sacrifice. Usually, it's the ladies, or if not, mashallah, many men too. There's somebody in the house, they take their time, full time, khidmat and service, for those who need the service. But when it does happen, then we go to this. Then the first thing should be, to close their eyes, tie the chins, tie the feet, so that in case when rigor mortis sets in, the chemical changes, the body is not frozen in a position where you cannot adjust. Sometimes if they get older, if they had maybe some surgeries and stuff, the knees may be stuck. Don't force the body to be straight. Whatever is there, just leave it there. But as much as you can, nowadays in the winter it's really not a problem. Sometimes in the summer, if you don't have air conditioning in the house, make sure keep the body cool. Because subhanAllah, this is the system Allah has set up, that the same bacteria that digest our food when we're alive, as soon as the hukm of Allah goes, as soon as Allah takes the life, then those same bacteria start to decompose the body. And heat accelerates decomposition. So I don't want to get too graphic, but the best thing to do for the deceased, for the family is a different thing, we'll cover that later, but immediate need for the deceased person is to lower the body temperature. Because if the body temperature stays above 70, 75 degrees, then it has other effects. So immediately we need to, decrease the body temperature. The reason I'm mentioning that is some people, if they're at the hospital or if somebody dies at home, we'll cover that as far as hospice, or someone I'm waiting for so-and-so. Oh, I'm waiting for so-and-so. The daughter is coming from California. Oh, the son is coming from Michigan. They're driving. If it's a matter of maybe an hour or two, nothing wrong with that. But if you're waiting 5, 10 hours for somebody, you don't want to leave the body outside during that time, because that's actually disrespectful to the body. Yes, back in India, Pakistan, whatever they used to do, that was back then. But today we have the technology and the facilities to lower the body temperature. So, and the last step we say, call the funeral director. Why? In this state of Illinois, you have to be licensed to pick up a body. This just, to be honest, it's just it's a hassle, but you have to be licensed to cut hair. You have to be licensed to be a barber. But this is just the country we live in. From some practical purposes too, there have been instances where somebody has, taken the body, and if there was some foul play, some murder or suicide, something. So just for legal reasons, it has to be a licensed person to pick up a body. So that's why we say call the funeral director, because they will not, any of the hospitals here, they will not allow just, my mom died, I'll just put her in my van and I'll just take her, wherever. No, you can't do that. It has to be somebody licensed, and it's a legal process to pick up the body. Let's say someone dies at home. Hospice. Hospice care is popular now. Hospice in the sense that somebody has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. But rather than saying we are going to treat them, or we're going to aggressively try to save the body, as you have to say, okay, fine, take them home, at least be in the company of your family. In fact, just yesterday I just met a chaplain, and they were saying they're taught that in the hospital, what they say is when somebody is dying, he's surrounded by doctors, and behind them is the family member. They're saying, okay, what can we do? But at home, this person is there, he's surrounded by family members, and in the back, their doctors say, what can we do to help? And ideally, if someone's going to die anyway, if you already know it's terminal, and in some diseases, it is, it's really, they know it's coming. It is possible to predict. So in that case, if under hospice care, they usually assign a nurse to the patient. So the first thing to do, if someone's passed away, and they usually coordinate this with the family, they explain this, but I'm just letting you know, so for your information. So when someone does pass away, you have to call the nurse. We cannot pick up a body until it has been officially declared dead. And the official declaration is done by the nurse. So after the nurse comes, then she will officially declare, she will check some signs of life, they take the pulse, so there's other things that they do to make sure that someone has been declared dead, and then they officially call a declaration of death. Once that's been done, then we can come and pick up the body. Same prepare body, meaning, so at home also you want to tie the chin, you want to tie the feet, and to close the eyes, same thing. A third scenario, which is exceptional, but it's still not uncommon, is that you're not diagnosed with the disease, but you die suddenly. Someone just had a heart attack, someone had an accident, or someone was shot, some gang violence, and to be honest, it happens a lot. So what do you do then? So if someone, especially at home, you can't just call, oh, my father died, okay, just pick up the body. No, because then these are called medical examiner's case. The medical examiner is the chief medical authority of the county. This being Naperville, DuPage County, most Chicago areas, Cook County. We cannot pick up the body until the body has been released by the medical examiner. In a hospice care, the nurses coordinate with the medical examiner. In the hospital, again, if it's an ER, if it's an emergency room, they also coordinate with the medical examiner. If it's a sudden death, somebody happens, somebody chokes. We had one a couple of years ago. It was a young girl, she choked on a toy or something, and they actually took her to the ER, and by the time they got there, she passed away. So now, even though she passed away at a hospital, but because it was a sudden death, and it was an unexplained death, it became a medical examiner's case. So the medical examiner, being the chief medical authority, they have to release the body before we can pick up. That's something you need to understand. Because some people say, oh, why are they taking so long? What is this? Because any person that dies in this country, there has to be a cause of death. There is a death certificate, which is good, to be honest. Unlike back home, you don't know what happened. Oh, unko, pet dard tha, bas chale gaye. Oh, but you know exactly what happened. So here you have to, you know, they want to make sure what happened. Why did somebody die? So because every death certificate has been signed by a doctor, they have to know what the cause of death was. So unless somebody has been somebody's care, if somebody's in hospital, obviously they have an attending physician. Somebody's in hospice, there's a physician looking after the medical history. But someone who died suddenly, they have to know what happened to them. So that's why the medical examiner becomes involved. So if it's a sudden death, then you call the police, you call the ambulance. Once they come, they will investigate. They will say, oh yeah, this person had heart surgery, you know, 5 days ago, he just came home. Okay, that makes sense. That maybe it was some complications. Or something that's reasonable. So if someone is older, usually beyond 65, then they usually pass. Okay, it was time to go anywhere, you know, as long as they had some sort of medical history, they had a PCP, a primary physician, then they call them, okay, this person passed away, are you willing to sign the death certificate? They say, okay. But if it was anyone younger, especially anyone less than 40, especially nowadays, you know, all these opioid epidemics going on, if it's a sudden death, they need to know what happened. So then they will become involved and they will actually take possession of the body. And they will take to their office. Here, DuPage County, the office is in Wheaton on County Farm Road in Cook County, downtown, close to, you know, the medical area, Rush University, in that area. But then they may do an autopsy. Autopsy, for those who know, it's a physical, they actually cut the body. It's a Y cut, and they actually take out the organs. And then they take samples from the organs. They also remove the scalp, they take out the brain. I don't want to get too graphic, but you should know, because something that happens, they go, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want my mom. Most of our people, you don't want something invasive. But if the medical examiner considers it a suspicious case, then they will do that. You can, and actually the Cook County is pretty accommodating. Actually, DuPage is not too bad too. Will County, you know, we have a lot of problems with. But these two, if you tell them, look, I'm a Muslim, I would rather not have the body autopsy, you know, he died, okay, I accept it, you know, whatever happened, we don't want to get into why and what, we're okay with it. And if the so it's their call, but the family can request. But anyway, at the end of all these three, that's when we come in. We come in once the body has been released, we pick up the body. What do? Our task, and not just it's the task of the funeral home, is to, first of all, pick up the body from wherever someone dies. The home, the medical examiner's office, or the hospital, whatever it may be. And then transportation is the main thing. And to provide a place. In fact, mashallah, good news, you know, for the Naperville community. I know, you know, Brother Shoaib and some of the other board members, they were discussing, mashallah, you just bought the new masjid there on 75th. They're discussing maybe having a place here in this area. Because now I know many of the brothers we go to either Berkeley or the Makkah Center. So alhamdulillah, what we have done as Muslim Funeral Services is we're trying to get the community involved. Most of the other funeral homes, the corporate funeral homes, what they do is they have a physical building. Then they have, as the other businesses are, people come in and they do this stuff there, like even now in Bridgeview area. But our understanding and you know, my thing, especially meeting with many of the elders from the community, is that our community members want to be involved. So due to that, we reached out to many of the communities. So the first one that actually was responsive was MCC. I don't know if you know, it's the oldest masjid here in Chicago. It's on the north side, MCC, and then the Albanian masjid, the one in Berkeley. So we reached out to them, look, why don't you just make a washing station in the masjid? As Canada has done, and some other, you know, in Europe, they do that. The masjids actually are involved in the process. Whereas historically, it had been a private business. You would go to, you can see, you drive down, you see many different funeral homes. So what that is that they bring the body there, do the preparations there, they have the viewing there. That's one location. But that cuts out the community. So what we wanted was the community to be involved. So alhamdulillah, MCC first, thought it was a good idea. then the Albanians got involved. And after that, when the other masjids saw, oh, this is good, not only for the community, for them to be involved, but also to be quite honest, if any of the board members are here, it's a financial benefit for the masjid. Because, they make money just as they make money on the graves. That we can discuss that later. But it's a service that the masjid is providing to the family. Just as the masjid has, they have the preschool here, or masjids, they have a gym here. So it's completely practical for them to ask, look, if you're giving your whatever donations going, this is where your donations are going to. So alhamdulillah, now we have many masjids that are involved. On the north side, we have the IFN in Waukegan, those that are in Libertyville. Then we have on the southeast side, Harvey Masjid, Berkeley, the Makkah Masjid there in Willowbrook, and then other masjids are alhamdulillah also involved. We ask you, all you need just for the legal work is just for us to pick up the body and drop off the body. That's all we need. The rest, the masjids can accommodate. If not, then we can also provide some of the other services. But that's basically what a funeral home does. Next, also, casket. To be honest, we do not need a casket. There's no law that says you have to have a casket. Casket means a tabut, a box to bury the body. And if back home, if you've ever gone for Umrah, after every salah, Salatul Amwat, if everyone's gone for Hajj or Umrah, after every salah, they have this announcement. And then if you ever go to Baqi, where, the cemetery there in Medina, they just bury straight in the ground. You don't need to have an extra container. This is just, again, these are Western traditions that that we are growing up with. But there's no law. Actually, that's one of the good things about here, is that there's no law that you have to have a casket. And to be honest, that also saves the community money. But if some people are still hung over, with the old way, I want a box. If that's the case, we could do that. Right now, today, what we're using is just a very simple tray, just something with a handle, something you can move a body with. Otherwise, it becomes very hard, how do you move a body? So we just have something with a handle, you can move the body. When we come in here, many times you've seen, we have the wheeled carrier, comes in here easily, goes in the hearse, and then goes straight there. That's all you really need. Just something you could carry the body in, something you could lower into the ground. That's all you really need. Transportation, transportation. Yes, this last part is important. As far as the paperwork, as I mentioned, anybody that dies, there has to be a cause of death. So that is our responsibility as a funeral home to file the death certificate. But we don't provide the death certificate. The death certificate is issued by the county. It's just like a marriage certificate or a birth certificate. It's a legal document. If ever you've gone there, you have to pay, DuPage County now is like $16. $16 for the first one, $6 for each additional one. It's a legal document. But our job is to file the death certificate, but it has to be filed in a proper manner. So what we do is we communicate with the family. Nowadays, everything is online, everything's through email. You fill out all the important information, the death certificate, the date of birth, social security number, parents' names, and all that stuff. We get that to you and make sure we confirm with you, because it is a legal document. Sometimes Muhammad with two M's, one M, A or E, that makes a difference. So that's one part. The second part is the doctor. In the meanwhile, the doctor is filling out the cause of death. When that's done, we forward to Springfield. Springfield okays it, then we send it back, and then we inform you it's been filed. But then the family actually goes and picks up the death certificate. Sometimes there is it's a miscommunication. It's the funeral director provides the death certificate. No, we file the death certificate. We don't actually give you the death certificate. Back in the day, actually, we did used to. Back about maybe 10, 12 years ago, because we had to physically go and file. When that was the case, we were already going to file, then we just picked them up for the families. But nowadays, because everything is electronic, it's just easier for everybody just to go on their own. Okay, next. Ship out of the country. We do that, but technically it's not preferred. I don't know if I have an extra slide here, or maybe you took it out, but while we're on this topic, some people say, I want to send my mom or dad back home. India, Pakistan, Morocco, Albanians. Albanians they do that a lot. Bosnians, they do that a lot. But we tell them you should not. Why? For three main reasons why you should not. The first thing is ikram al-mayyit dafnuha. Or kama qala Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the ikram, the respect for the deceased is that you bury as soon as possible. So in fact, we have gotten calls, 9, 10 a.m. and we have buried by 2, 3 p.m. the same day. Within 4 or 5 hours, someone just died, they're already in the ground. MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Brother Imran and all these other masjids, that are very quick. They have good relationship with the cemeteries. You just give one phone call, they go and open, and alhamdulillah, it works out. So ideally, that should be the case. That you don't want to wait to bury somebody. But if you're shipping overseas, there's extra paperwork required. You have to go to the county, there's a whole list of paperwork required, and that takes time. It takes at least 2-3 days just to get the paperwork. Then the flight, especially nowadays, we're back home, if you're going, it takes a day, just the flying time. Then by the time they land over there, then from there actually get to the grave, it's another maybe a day or two. So by the time somebody's in the ground, if you're shipping overseas, and then this is not counting weekends, because the government doesn't work on Saturdays, Sundays, or long weekends. If this, like we just had President's Day, or if we have a Labor Day or something, all the offices are closed, you can't do paperwork then. That adds to the time. So we're looking at least 4 or 5 days before somebody is buried. And that should not be the case. Number two, it's more expensive. Here, if you bury, as we'll get to later on towards the numbers, you can bury within $3,500 to $4,000. But shipping overseas, not just counting the airline charges, which is anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 depending on the weight of the person, and the embalming, which we'll get to, it takes at least $6,000, $7,000, maybe even $8,000 to ship overseas. So that extra money that you're putting in, you can give to the widow, you can give to the children, you can give sadaqah in the deceased name. But why spend that in for shipping bodies? And number three, the karahiyat for shipping bodies overseas is embalming. What is embalming? Without getting too graphic, embalming is a way to preserve the body. As I've mentioned earlier, the system Allah has set up, the bacteria starts to decompose the body at the cellular level. So in order to stop that, because the body is going to be delayed in burial, 4 or 5 days, and it's going to be going in a tight container in an airplane. So for health reasons, all the airlines and all the consulates, they require the body be embalmed.